share with your team to prepare them for the near future or the sustainability? So with the future of sustainability, we have to look at several things. One of the things, of course, is greenfield. What does that mean? We talk about big township developments, brand new developments that's up and coming in Singapore. And of course, there are many opportunities outside of Singapore. But what's available here? You know, we talk about Punggol, Tengah, which is of course one of the new digital townships. We talk about the Southern Waterfront development, right? So again, new places that are going to be housed for residential, for commercial, for live, work, play. You also have Paya Lebar, right? Another potential area. So it seems that there's a lot of opportunities for greenfield, new buildings. This is an image of a Reem Island. This is one of my projects. It's in the Middle East, in Abu Dhabi, but there's, again, many other townships similar like this where we build it from scratch, build it from the sea. One of the projects that I was involved with is, of course, the integrated resort, as well as the Sentosa Cove Township, reclaimed from the sea all the way up to what it is today. So again, hold on to the thought of what sustainability can do for you in greenfield while I move on to the next slide. Brownfield, a little bit something closer to home. Right? Some of you may not recognize this name. Brownfield means existing buildings, buildings that have been around for the last 10, 30, even 50 years. We know that Singapore has a lot of this, and in fact, the government is encouraging us to renew and refurbish a lot of our old properties. It doesn't matter whether you own a building, but you could also be leasing a few floors. And do you need to renew it? Absolutely. Why? Because your team, the people that work with you in this COVID environment, in previously open concept offices, are changing because the paradigm in the way they work, live, and play are also changing. So the last 2 years has given us a lot of ideas of where we should be in terms of work, live, and play. So brownfields are important. Why? Because majority of Singapore's buildings are brownfield. There's so many buildings that need to be green. In fact, this is one of the biggest challenges we have in Singapore because a lot of landowners, tenants, they're struggling with trying to figure out what's the best way to deal with brownfield sites. Move on. This is a little quote from our Prime Minister, Lee Hsien Loong. Of course, he talks about the world is changing. Unless we change, we will fall behind. So much truth in those few words. But this is not just the case that we have to change. Here he's talking about changing the way we work, the way we approach processes, how we manage our teams, how we manage our people. So with this, of course, it also means reskilling and training of your teams. And what is important to them doesn't mean that it's going to be easy to deliver, to implement, because everybody struggles with teaching and training and learning. This is again something that's very common in Singapore. So what kind of things are we supposed to be learning? What are your teams supposed to be trained to do? Now, just now the first two images I showed you was the greenfield and the brownfield. So we're coming back to that now. We need to create sustainable buildings. Why? Well, just this morning, Europe is facing a heat wave, right? Temperatures are soaring. Can that happen in Singapore? Yes, but maybe not just heat wave. How about flooding? Right? Water levels are rising. Singapore, where you have never seen a river in Orchard Road, one day you saw one. Right? Some of us got surprised. But again, this is where greening, energy conservation, sustainability comes in. It's not just about pushing technology into these areas, which is the second word here. I put a question mark. Sustainable buildings, do they equal digitalization? Now the word here, digitalization and digitization, is different. Digitization means converting data or information into data. Digitalization means you are going to change the process, the management, the way it works. So you can't have the same people doing the same thing over and over again. It could be successful, but it will change over the next few years. And believe it or not, it's going to change quite fast, right? Because we are in a very new VUCA world, very volatile world. So what kind of implications do you think could happen with your force, your workforce? Well, first of all, they leave. Why? Perhaps other people are going to give them training opportunities, reskilling opportunities. What does all this mean for them? Higher wages, better opportunities, career enhancement. So if you don't reskill and retrain them, they'll go to somebody else who will. But is it just putting them in a training course every year? No, it's also not that easy. Again, you have to find out what it is that they need. What's in it for the company? Because obviously you don't want to train people and have them just fill up training hours. You want them to contribute back to the company. So these are the kind of implications that we can help you to think about and try to structure things that may be useful for your organization. This is Singapore's Green Plan for 2030. Not really far away, right? We're 2022, that's 8 years from now. But again, doesn't mean we're not going to achieve it. But look at the points that we have here. We talk about city in nature, creating a green and livable, sustainable home. That's residential. We have the green government. Of course, we have some of the government sector here. And of course, they're pushing us very hard, whether you're private sector, public sector, education. We have to embrace it. Is it easy? No. But do we have to start? Yes. And in fact, we need to start yesterday. Energy reset. Some of you have heard about super low energy buildings, net zero energy buildings. That's what NUS has built. But of course, to test it out, to get people to understand how to incorporate it into your organization, into your team, into your workforce, into the way you carry out all your work, that's going to be the test, the litmus test. And then how about things like being resilient, future, green economy, sustainable living? All these are nice, fanciful words, but we're going to help to break it down for you, especially when you work with us on how to skill your teams, because we believe that training has to be customized. We need to understand your needs. So that's what we are hoping to be here today. And I'm from the Department of the Built Environment. So these are the kind of subject matters that we cover. Project finance and construction law. Now some people said, my teams are technicians, so they don't need to know about finance and law. I challenge you on that, right? Because when you train your people, it doesn't have to be very advanced finance or costs or law. It can be basic things that just prevent insurance claims, slip and falls. We deal with a lot of simple managing agent, property management companies for safety and health. Simple things like rigging, putting up signboards to prevent slip and falls. That may be simple. But at the same time, there's a lot of law and finance in the background. We talk about project management and digital construction. Today, digitalization involves drones, 5G network, autonomous robots. You can't have a auntie to come in and do your facility management or cleaning and maintenance, but you have to deploy robots. But some people think that by deploying robots, we're going to lose our workforce or people will become jobless. On the contrary, it's going to change. In fact, it's going to make it better for them. But is it easy for the workforce to accept all these new technology, this digitalization? They need training to help to understand how to reprocess the way they work. And that's where the challenge comes when it comes to training. How about building energy efficiency and indoor environment? You've seen solar panels up there, but how do you apply solar panels? What's the life cycle of solar panels? What's the cost of installing solar panels, PV, as well as financing them? Even a bigger question, what happens if your solar panel needs to change and you need to dispose can be poisonous, yeah? PVs, photovoltaic cells. You can't just throw it into the bin. You need to recycle, reuse, right? So there are many things that we can train people from the ground, from middle management, even senior management on leadership in such things, because sustainability today is a key focus in a lot of corporate social responsibility, CSR, in public listed companies, in banks. I used to work in a bank. Again, these are not new, but of course, they have more become sort of the byword today of what's actually important for your team and the workforce that you lead. Sustainable buildings and materials. What's that got to do with us? What's it got to do with your workforce? We look at green label, right? When we buy simple things like detergent, is it biodegradable? We look at materials that we use every day, fabrics, carpets. Do they help you? Of course, they're beautiful, but do you know that the carpets also absorb a lot of your air conditioning? It means that you have to pump more aircon and fresh air in order to maintain your carpets. You know, strange phenomena, but this is what the Department of Built Environment is actually researching into. Now, of course, I think the last thing you want is a bare concrete finish building with no finishes. That's also pretty ugly, right? So what's the right balance between the two? So these are areas, again, we hope to not only share with your teams about the research that we do, but case studies that we have actually learned, and we also worked with various different employers and how they've actually been successful in implementing some of these ideas, managing their teams, how to incorporate the digital technology into their workforce to help their workforce advance in the next 5-10 years. Okay. So that's what I have for you today. So I'll keep, I'm going to pass you over to Seng and introduce him, and then I'll take your questions later. Thank you.
Thanks, Daniel. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Seng from Department of Mechanical Engineering. But for today's presentation, I'm actually kind of representing the college to present some of the challenges and opportunities pertaining to the low carbon energy sector. I will start by sort of with an overview of how Singapore is actually charting its low carbon future, right? Some of the mitigation, the measures that our government have actually identified, the associated challenges and opportunities, as well as some of the priority skills that our graduates can actually pick up, right, in order to better prepare themselves for the low carbon energy economy. So Daniel has actually presented on the green plan just now. So I will actually specifically focus more on the energy aspect, right? So for this, I would just probably point to the fact that Singapore actually has certain targets, right? For example, our long-term low emission deployment strategies, right? Basically is to halve the emission from its peak to 33 million ton of CO2 equivalent by 2050, and to be net zero, right? Emission as soon as viable in the second half of the century. But the later is actually, it will be around or before middle of the century. And very likely, the government is going to put the definite year for the upcoming COP27, right? So how do our workforce actually better prepare themselves in order to support the national ambition? Okay, so as mentioned, I will go direct into the energy aspects, right? So basically, it cut across a number of sectors, right? Ranging from power generation, where the focus is actually more on improving the energy efficiency, right? For example, there's target of actually achieving at least 2 gigawatt peak of solar energy by 2030, as well as the low carbon technologies solutions for power generations. Whereas for the industry sectors, again, one of the key focus is actually on increasing the energy efficiency, right? And we are looking at system level solutions, right? Again, there will be a lot of interest on the development of or deployment of low carbon technologies. And for transport, right, I think as everybody is aware, I think we have actually set a target to actually phase out internal combustion engine by 2040. And over the last couple of months, right, the number of EV or COE that's issued for electric vehicles actually gone up quite substantially. Yeah, if I remember correctly, now it's actually about 8%, right? And as you drive on the public, suddenly you will come across EV quite readily. Okay, the other is actually the 9 in 10 peak period, the journeys on work cycle or ride by 2040, right? So that's actually the last mile solution, right? If possible, obviously to avoid the use of vehicles, right? And rather actually either walk, cycle, or ride. So I already mentioned clean the vehicles. Then building, I think Daniel have actually covered quite a lot. So this bit, I will probably just skip this. And for household, right? So as you're well aware, right, you're purchasing your fridge or your air conditioning system. So NEA already has the mandatory energy labeling scheme, and that's actually working pretty well. So you can go with the number of ticks, right, to help you select the appliances of the right energy efficiency, right? Then there's a minimum energy performance standards, which we are raising over time, right? Because as technology advances, then obviously we need to raise the bar, right? Then there's actually the green town programs. And last but not least will be waste and water, right? So I think increasingly we're actually adopting a circular economy approach, right? Whereby we're actually actively looking at reducing the waste, then followed by recycling, as well as when it comes to desalination and used water treatment, right? Again, focusing quite a bit on the improving the energy efficiency, because for desalination and used water treatments, these tends to be very energy intensive processes, okay? Then the other thing that we have actually recently announced, right, is actually the increase the carbon tax, right? So again, this is actually a bit outdated, right? So currently our carbon tax is actually at $5 per ton of CO2 equivalent, right? The latest announcement is actually we're going to actually raise it to the range of up to $80 by 2040. So that's going to be very substantial increase. And this is actually really to send the right signal to the industry, right? That you should look into reducing emissions. So next, I'd like to cover some of the challenges in the transition to a low carbon energy future, right? First, actually to explore importing renewable energy from neighboring countries, right? Singapore obviously is very limited by its small land mass, right? So you talk about deployment of renewable, in particular solar, which is the only viable form of renewable energy, right? Is going to be very limited, right? So even if you cover all the rooftop space with PV, the percentage of your electricity generation that would be coming from solar will still be very limited. So that's why the government has actually announced the plan, right, to import renewable energy from neighboring countries, right? So we have already announced a 2-year trial to import 100 megawatt of electricity from Malaysia. Then there's the Lao PDR, Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore power integration projects. But Singapore actually remains vulnerable to geopolitical and economic shift of new energy supply chain. And if you have read the news, right, you know that both Indonesia and Malaysia have actually announced that they won't actually look at exporting renewable electricity, right? So that's why there's also a lot of, not beyond the technical issues, right? There's also the geopolitics issues, the bilateral relationships, right? The multilateral relationship issues that has to be addressed. So you find that increasingly it's not just the technical know-how, but really some of the softer aspect of the social sciences that actually comes into play, right? So I think no longer we're actually looking at just training workforce with the technical domain, but I think we have to broaden the training, broaden the skill set, right? So that you can actually cover both the social sciences, the behavioral, as well as the technical aspects. Then the other aspect is actually hydrogen, right? So there's a lot of interest, not only from Singapore, but from pretty much all the countries around the world, right? To really look into hydrogen production, right? As well as distribution and the application. So Singapore actually has signed deal with Chile to import hydrogen to further decarbonize, right? So that's happened like early the last year. But there's still the challenge to produce hydrogen with minimal carbon emission, right? Hydrogen currently is still actually produced using the fossil fuel, right? But I think over time, we're actually really looking at green hydrogen production, right? Whereby, for example, you're making use of renewable energy to basically do the hydrogen production. But we also have to caution against being dependent on new and emerging supply chains. So that's why I think our government have always adopted a very pragmatic approach, right? It's not just a single silver bullet, but really it's really an array of options, right, that will better ensure energy security, resiliency, as well as the affordability. So what are some of the opportunities in the transition to a low carbon energy futures, right? So first, you have read in the news that Singapore is going to increase its solar deployment, right? So in April 2020, EMA, or Energy Market Authority, announced that Singapore is actually on target to achieve its 2020 solar deployment target of 350 megawatt peak by the Q1 2020. That was actually set 10 years before, right, which was in 2010. And the next target is actually to achieve 1.5 gigawatt peak by 2025, and at least 2 gigawatt peak of solar deployment by 2030. But even at 2 gigawatt peak, right, again, this is just going to be a very small percentage, right, in terms of our overall energy consumption. So some of the associated initiative includes like pilot trials on innovative energy storage solutions, as well as floating the solar, right? For example, at Tengah, there's actually this one of the world's largest floating the PV platform or projects. So the other is actually the associated investment in low carbon solutions, right? So for example, I think early this year, right, there was this announcement of projects funded under the Low Carbon Energy Research Program, the LCER, and in the total $49 million is actually going into projects that will actually develop such low carbon solutions. Then Singapore also have signed a number of MOU on cooperation of low emission solutions. But what are the priority skills that the workforce needs to possess in order to prepare for the low carbon energy economy, right? So I've actually extracted this from the SSG website, which is a skills demand for the future economy, right? Specifically focusing on the green economy. So let's just quickly run through the top 5 or so, right? First is actually the green process design. Second, carbon footprint management, okay? And third is environmental management system framework / policy. Sustainability management and design for manufacturing and assembly, right? So interestingly, you see, you find that this is actually comprising of both hard skills as well as soft skills, right? So that's why I think it's important that our future workforce don't overly focus on a single domain, but rather I think you need to look into, so over time, having a broad base of skill set, right? So that we can actually address sustainability, address energy challenges in a holistic fashion. Okay, with that, I'll pass my time to the last speaker.
Thanks. Good afternoon all. I'm Ki Hong from the Division of Industrial Design. I have 20 years of industry experience, so I'll share a bit on this topic. Designing for sustainability. So many companies are still hesitant to embrace it, thinking that the cost may not justify, and a lot of time it's just for CSR purpose. But if you I'm going to show some example that it need not be mutually exclusive, that cost goes nowhere. It may equate to business performance at the same time. So let me bring in a case study by Adidas. They work with Pali, which is a NGO bringing awareness to ocean waste, and together they process waste you see there into manufacturing material. And in 2015, they launched 7,000 pairs of sneakers. It was sold out overnight. That's how hot it is, and they went out for more. So what happened in the next 5 years, they ship about 30 million pairs of sneakers using that same material. So it just shows that it not only improve the CSR profile, it brings in a lot of, it's potentially able to bring in a lot of profit. Okay. And two things come to mind here. One is that, as you can see, design is the best stage to unlock ecological impact. And I'll show some case study later on. And another thing it may cross your mind is that, but this is Adidas. Not all of us of this scale and size. And how might we do it? But if you look at the long tail effect, Adidas on the left side and big initiative like that. But if you look at the right side of the chart, all of us collectively, we can make a huge or even bigger impact together. So everybody can be involved, all companies can be involved in this. Let's try to look beyond recycling because that's well known, and Adidas case study also is using the same case study. You can utilize our material science know-how by engaging us in a ITG program if you're keen on this area. Next, I'll look at another strategy. This is a strategy of using as little material as possible without compromising your quality. So what that translates to in your business is that you use less material costs, and that translates to lower shipping costs at the same time. And you are contributing to sustainability. Okay, so that can be easily accomplished with software simulation, where you can figure out where to remove material and where to add material to optimize the whole structural design. Again, we offer this for consulting if you like to engage us. And here, another way is that in today's throwaway world, you can differentiate your product line by selling durability, things that are more timeless, that have a longer lifespan. You raise your perceived value and you raise your price point. That's another strategy. Again, we offer this program. Instead of looking at your product as an object, how about looking at it as a system of modular parts? So with these, as the users need change over time, they can actually purchase upgrades from you. And instead of discarding the product, it has a longer lifespan. And that also brings the advantage of servicing. Instead of bringing the whole product back, you can just send them parts to replace. So this is also another strategy. Another one here, if you are this company and you sell a product in this nice packaging, you can sell refillable at a lower cost. So basically what this means as a strategy is that it's an automatic loyalty program that hook onto your product line longer. So there are many strategies that can improve your business performance and bring sustainability. Okay, last but unknown, and we have been using this for the longest time, human-centered design. And how does it work? So basically, the principle is that we try to understand users. We know their needs, so we don't create and design features that no one wants to use. So we don't have that kind of wastage. So let me show you the process. Okay, if you look at these, right, this is where design thinking process are derived from. So you have a research part where you try to understand the user before you jump into the design part. And what this means is that we try to empathize with the user. We put ourselves in their shoes. We try to understand what they need and what they don't need. And after that, we are better able to address their needs. And with that, we create less excess. Again, we offer design thinking modules, as you know. You can engage us. And also, we can customize these for your company's needs. Okay, here are some projects that I work on with my team here at Changi Airport. This is an immigration Autogate system where you scan your passport, your boarding pass at T3, T4, Seletar Airport if you have a private jet. So objective is to process more passengers with less resources. As you can see in the chart earlier, we have various methods of research to understand the user, see where the pinpoint, validate the workflow. And through that, we create a visualization to show where the opportunity lies to improve the whole interface and system. This is to align with stakeholders. And after that, then we jump into the design part, as you see in the earlier chart. Even in the design part, we explore multiple versions because we still need to align with our stakeholder like ICA, Changi Airport Group. So we integrate with the branding, the workflow. So with that, this is what is the end result after a few iterations. So this is what you get at the airport. And our data shows that we exceed 97% of throughput unassisted. So they are able to use less manpower. And in fact, some of the machines don't even need to be active because it's so efficient. So you can see that they save on energy, they save on manpower, and they boost business performance. Again, you may think that, hey, but I'm not an airport. Most of us are operating at a smaller scale. Let me show you a very small project that we did. So this is for Nanya Opticals high-end line, Alexis. It's a 700 square feet shop. And they engage us to improve customer experience without increasing resources. Again, you see here, this is the research part. Okay, to summarize, the problem here is that they have about more than 50 light source blasting down. And you know that bright light and elderly customer doesn't go hand in hand very well. You can see a lot of wrinkles. So that's not good. You can see workflow are affected by things stranded everywhere. You can see a few things that it's getting hot. It gets hot when there's a crowd there because of the heat source. So multiple things. And again, we align. This is also part of design thinking module. So we align to see that where we prioritize the solution and before we jump in. Again, like the airport, we come up with multiple solutions. So this is to align not just with stakeholder, but with the ground staff because they're the one that will be stuck with this after we leave. So with that, we make iteration and okay, this is the end result. So as you can see, when we use tools like sustainable design, human-centered design, it need not end up with a Frankenstein design look. I mean, this is like any other outlet in Orchard Road. You can't tell, but if you look closely at the light over here, so you can see that there's soft light on top shooting down at the user when they try to frame. There's a soft light in front. So that replicates what you get when you go to a photo studio to shoot your portrait. Most of your wrinkles are cut out, the shadows are cut out, and customers look fabulous in it. That is the key selling point in that shop. Okay, and there are more. And so just to point out a few more things, you can see things are more organized, so transaction time is reduced. And you can see grilled, so whatever mess they create don't have to be cleaned up, it's not visible by the customer. And whatever they do, even taking their lunch, they can look forward in the shop. So they need less manpower to monitor. So sales increase about 30%, but they use the same manpower, because of shorter transaction time, and the light source has been cut down to below 30 light source. So it's cooler, it's low energy consumption. In other words, I wrap it up. Hey, designing for sustainability can impact business performance. Thank you. You can you don't have to key in if you want to ask us this. Just since you're here, if you want to ask, or you can key in if you want. Hi, Prof. Song. We are trying to see how we can nudge user behavior towards without impeding their research, especially in lab buildings. Any tips? I don't really know how to answer that. Okay, nudge is actually a discipline in itself. Nudge design, where we actually, I don't know that is the right word, to manipulate the user to do certain things, to make you check a box, to make you clear your tray. So I think I don't think I can answer that within the time frame. I think we can, maybe I can talk to you later if I can hang around here and talk to you later.
Okay, maybe I can also jump in and share a bit because one of the challenges with lab buildings, because there's all this safety and health risk and also discharge of, depending on what kind of lab you have. If it's a biological lab, then of course you have certain things that you have to be concerned about, like blood, live organisms, etc. So I think those could be issues. Now, trying to create sustainable labs is quite challenging. So like Prof. Song said, you can't answer it within this round. But having said that, I'd like to chip in that it is possible to encourage lower energy, and of course, these are also things that had to be implemented into the lab itself. So it also means renovating the lab. Yeah, so I'm just going to stop here, and then of course you can chat when we're outside. So let us go to the next question. Is it?
How to convince stakeholders they need to further change the workforce to be more sustainable?
I think anyone.
Well, you know, there's a reason why I focus on commercial project rather than home project, in the sense that home project, the owner can do whatever they want to do, but when it comes to a business project, it's all about profit and loss. So I think the best mechanism is about something that's tied to profitability, to bring in more customer, more revenue, lower bottom line, the increasing your top line. So those are the most common methods that we use to actually encourage them. So as you can see the charts that I showed earlier, right? A lot of the things are tied towards like getting customer, because that's the only way you get them to spend more money to rectify it. So for example, that lighting, the lighting I showed you earlier, we have the evidence to show them that people are turned off by your lighting, because we show people that just go towards very darkest corner in the whole shop to look at themselves trying on the frame. We show evidence like that. Then they realize that, hey, why are people going to one corner to try on the frame? We told them that, hey, if you improve the lighting, you get more purchases, because people will only buy when they look good. So that's how we make them spend the most on the lighting system. So I hope that answered your question. There are a lot more examples, but in the short time, so I leave more room for other questions. But I can talk to you later, whoever's asking that. I'm here.
Maybe I can also add a little bit on the second question. I think one way is actually to focus on for example, the total cost of ownership, instead of just focusing on the first cost, right? Because associated with some of the newer sustainable solutions, right? It may cost a bit more for the capex, right? But if you look at the overall product life cycle, if let's suppose the operating cost there will be substantial savings on the OPEX, right? Then the total cost of ownership can be lower compared to the conventional solution. So that's one bit. The other, I think, when it comes to the multiple stakeholders, I think we really have to strive for win-win arrangement, right? So it cannot be a case whereby there's just one winner and the rest being loser, right? So there may be a need to look into, for example, how can some of the saving can be transferred to the other stakeholders, right? So that everybody feels that they actually all have certain wins. Yeah, I think that's probably also another possible approach.
I'll take this next question on the brownfield. What are the skills needed to continue to maintain or convert to greenfield for mid-careerists? So of course, when you talk about brownfield, tends to be smaller scale. You're talking about one floor, one unit, etc. Because older buildings. But of course, very rarely you will have a complete change of the entire whole building, like demolish them and rebuild. But talking about opportunity on greenfield, you would realize that a lot of things that we're doing, whether it's for our workforce or for the company, is trying to anchor for new projects or new opportunities in a larger industry or in new revenue streams. So of course, one of the important things about bringing the people is to not only brief them or tell them how to upskill, because they're already doing some of these basic things like facility management, project management in a small area, how to bring it up to a larger area, but that also involves understanding what people have done in big $100 million projects. What's the difference between $100 million projects and a $1 million or $500,000 renovation? These are again areas that we can uplift through law, contracts, etc. Because you use different kind of contracts for different scale, or even equipment for digital technology. You would be using different types of technology depending on the size of the project. Yeah, so those are the kind of things you would need.
Okay. Besides design thinking, actually there's industrial design, human-centered design, and a lot of time the research, some of the parts that you see on the research, what you call a UX, user experience audit, you see some of the case study there. They did not be done by someone that's trained in design. We run modules that we can run you through the process and can guide you through. We have consulting package also that we can get you started, a starter package. So after that, your staff can run by themselves. It's actually very systematic because I think if you work in an environment where there are many stakeholders, you need evidence. It's not about a person telling you something, but it's documenting the evidence, collating, meeting all the dots, collating, showing you the insight that, and framing the right thing to solve. Because if you're framing it the right way to solve, that's the most viable way to solve it. Taking into consideration the commercial aspect, also on the people's behavior aspect of it. So it's quite all-rounded, it's quite objective, it's highly trainable. You don't need to go to college for 4 or 5 years to do one module like that. You can talk to us.
I guess I can take the question on low carbon, the technology for power generation. Okay, so I think there are a couple of things that can be done, but when we talk about the low carbon technology for power generations, again, I think we shouldn't expect the energy step change, right? As the name implies, energy transition, right? So there will be a process when we switch from conventional fossil fuel to renewables, right? So I think during this process, we really need to look at a mix of technology, but then the question is then how do we fast track, right? For example, the deployment or development of low carbon technology. One way is actually to create the test bed, right? Whereby, for example, researchers and industry come together, right? To actually co-develop and de-risk new solutions, right? And then with the suitable support from the government, from the industry, that can actually lead to the fast track deployment. So I think that's one aspect, right? Then the other is, I think, is really more of like the financing, right? For example, you need the right level of carbon pricing, right? Together with a carbon market, right? Whereby, for example, the generation of carbon credit, right? Or the revenue that you actually get from the sales of the carbon credit can then be used for financing some of these low carbon technologies development. So I think it's really a all hands on deck moment, right? So we have to really take a holistic and collaborative approach. Yeah, so I wouldn't think there's actually one single strategy, right? But I think collectively, the government, the industry, the researchers, right, or even the citizens have to really come together, right? Because this really requires everybody's collective efforts.
I think I can take this one. Do you have any advice on how we can apply green approach on IT system integration, on IT integration projects instead of just building? Yes, we do. But of course, this is under research at the moment. We are working with companies, like, for example, data centers, how to improve cooling on the hot and cold hours, and how to integrate some of this software, because we also do coding and write apps in order to measure the cooling temperatures in order to maintain data centers. But of course, the green approach can be quite tricky, because in terms of data centers, it's very large and there's a huge investment right now. So definitely there can be some case studies that we can share through our courses, but of course, when we come to consultation, I will have to bring in our team, because we have various different professors with different specialties in IT and coding as well. So just now you saw some of our areas of teaching include digital construction, so that would also be part of that. Yeah, I think that's about all the time we have. So we'll be happy to take more questions and chat with you outside. Thank you very much for joining us today.